friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. Oh, don't we know it? Got my brother on the other side of the mic here. There's a lot of adversity happening.
I think we're further apart this podcast,
Yeah, safe spaces. I'm trying to say safe. No, we're not fighting. It's okay, everyone.
Not yet, at least. Well, I am Pastor Coy.
I'm Pastor Jesse.
And welcome to the Pulpit Aside.
Pulpit Aside, remember that.
This is season
3.
Well, for this season, ladies and gentlemen, to all of our listeners, first of all, we want to thank you for following us and liking and sharing and being a part of our podcast called Pulpit Aside. For this season, we're going to do something a little bit different than what we initially set out to do when we started this podcast.
What are we going to do this season, Coy?
We're going to get a little preachy.
No, we're not.
No, we're going to actually, though, take a look at some biblical characters in the Bible, stories that are very common, not only in church, but in our childhood growing up. And we're going to talk about some of the different characters and storylines and even some of the, significant points that take place in some of these biblical characters in their lives. But
we're going to read the Bible?
We're going to read the Bible. However, we're not going to preach.
Better not.
We're not going to bring our 3-point sermons from Sunday and then try to reduplicate them on Pulpit Aside. We're going to simply have some conversations.
Yeah.
And in these conversations, we do want to, we want to remain true to the stories that are in the text, but we want to bring out some more practical applications. Not for like a typical Sunday morning, but just as if you were doing a morning devotion and saying, Lord, speak and show me what you would want me to see in your word today.
Yeah. Sort of reading between the lines, stuff you don't do when you preach so much, but where's real life happening behind the curtain of these scriptures? So what are we digging into today, Pastor Coy?
Well, in light of the verse that you read in Proverbs, I want to read it again real quick.
A friend loves at all times, but a brother is born for adversity. Proverbs 17:17.
You guys
out my noggin.
Did that from memory.
That's
boy.
Right. We'd be knowing the word, hiding the word in my heart.
So we want to. We recognize that not only in our time but throughout history, church can be a very divided place. Even though Christ has unified us, He has brought peace between us and God and us and one another and called us to preserve that peace. We just unfortunately don't do the best job as siblings in preserving the peace that Christ has created.
Maybe we really are Proverbs 17 brothers. Are you saying we're a little divided sometimes in 2025?
It is 2025.
It
right?
is. I almost said 2024. You caught me.
As you and I both know, that church oftentimes can be a very, again, divided place. And whether it is something with regards to, as we just seen with political lines, whether it's racial lines, which is a huge barrier not only for our country, but for lots of other places, but especially in our country's history. And then, of course, denominational differences that often will cause us to not see each other as brothers and sisters in Christ and even question whether or not you belong to Christ.
Right.
So,
wow.
But
there's so much to be said.
Without getting into all of that, we want to just deal with how some of these biblical characters in the story of Cain and Abel.
We're going
to talk about, we're going to start like in the beginning,
A very good place to start.
Like the first confrontation between brothers takes place.
First brothers.
That's right.
These are the first brothers. And they're already fighting.
Hey, starts early.
Post-fall.
So, but bringing out some very practical applications from this story for us to take away. So here's what I'm going to do. I know most people know the story. Initially, we said we were just going to summarize it. But, man, I think
You're going to read it?
I'm going to read something.
You're going to read the Bible on our podcast.
I'm going to read the Bible. I think it can be a good thing.
I'll give it a pass.
Channel my inner James Earl Jones voice. Okay?
Yes, please.
All right, look, in Genesis chapter 4, and I'll give verse 1 just for some context. And it says this: Now the man had relations with his wife Eve, and she conceived and gave birth to Cain. And she said, I have gotten a man-child with the help of the Lord.
What version are we reading?
This is the New American Standard Bible,
All right.
NASB, the
Can you translate?
1995 edition.
What kind of relations did the man have with his wife? Wait, that's PG-13, isn't it?
They had sex. I can
Oh.
keep that's PG-13. So they had sex.
I know, right?
You know, is that acceptable?
Sure.
Okay.
You're just getting.
I could have
okay.
said they made love.
Read
Would
on.
that be better? I mean, you brought this up.
I know, because I started hearing a foreign language.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so
We're in a post NIV world, bro.
we are. Well, that's.
But you go ahead and read the New American Standard
I was
because you're
trying
my
to keep
brother
PG.
and I love
Relations
you.
is PG.
I know.
All right. So, she said,
But you said man-child really tripped me up. I
Well-
just gotta be honest.
Well, that's true. So, what does your translation say? A son, boy, child?
brought forth a man, which is still troubling because I hope a man did not come out of her womb.
You are. See, this is how you know we're not
And
preaching
later-
on Sunday morning, right?
Later, she gave birth to his brother Abel. Carry on.
All right, I'll carry on. And Abel was a keeper of flocks, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. So it came about in the course of time that Cain brought an offering to the Lord of the fruit of the ground. Abel, on his part, also brought of the firstlings of his flock and of their fat portions. And the Lord had regard for Abel and for his offering, but for Cain and for his offering he had no regard. So Cain became very angry, his countenance fell. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? Why has your countenance fallen? If you do well, will not your countenance be lifted up? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door, and its desire is for you, but you must master it." Cain told Abel his brother, and it came about when they were in the field that Cain rose up against Abel his brother and killed him. That's Genesis chapter 4, verses 1 through 8. I'll stop there.
First brothers, first murder. Dang.
Yeah. You know what's interesting is that this is the first brothers.
Very first.
Now, we don't have any other confrontations between them. But I'm assuming there were probably others. I mean,
Okay,
these
yeah.
are probably two.
There's a history.
Yeah, young men, grown men, because they have jobs, they're working. So there's probably got to be some background stuff that's taking place. But in the Bible, we see first brothers, first confrontation leads to murder. So the first brothers, first murder happens. That's actually really crazy when you think about it.
It is.
Yeah, it's because it's not their sons or, grandsons or even nephews. Like, this is a huge thing.
It is.
And so, go ahead.
No, I mean, there's a lot to talk about here. Where do we start?
Yeah, I think we got to first start like, well, why did that happen?
Yes. Rewind. So, yeah, there's contention here, but it started with kind of their relationship to God.
Yes.
That's interesting too,
Yes.
right? And my first question when we're reading this story, right, is, they both brought their offering, and it says in the NIV, the Lord looked with favor on Abel and his offering, but on Cain and his offering he did not look with favor. Cain was very angry and his face was downcast, but we don't know why. Why was Abel's offering favored and Cain's not?
Well, and that's a great question because, obviously, like the Hebrew, I'm going to be a little bit preachy here.
Getting scholarly now.
Hebrews 11 talks about the faith that Abel has when he gives
Sure.
his offering. But I think something that's significant about the way Abel's offering is described in comparison to Cain's. Because Cain's offering is described as, it came about in the course of time, Cain brought an offering to the Lord. Now, what's interesting is the Lord doesn't ask for an offering. So, and maybe this was something that has been established beforehand. They give a yearly offering, I don't know, but it's not like God's asking for it. He just brings an offering. And at first glance, you think, oh, okay, he brought a gift. But then with Abel's, it says he brought part of the firstlings of his flock and the fat portions. And later on, we will see in the law that part of what God at times requests from his people as something like in addition to like be the fat portions of
Or the
an
first
animal,
fruits.
or the first fruits. And so in some sense, Abel seems to be given like
Something
his
of
best.
greater
So like,
value.
yeah, something of greater value or meaning to him. Yes.
Right. Well, Well, if you want to play the other side, I don't want to say devil's advocate, but
Okay.
Cain does it first. I mean, according to the scriptural narrative, right?
Yeah,
Cain
right.
brings his offering, and then Abel. Like, and if you want to play the brother narrative, it's like, oh, Cain's bringing an offering. I'm going to bring an offering. My offering's going to be better, and it was.
Okay.
I mean, it doesn't say that,
I'm
but
glad
like,
you're gonna play the other side because that may be what Cain was thinking. I don't think that's what Abel
like
was
this
thinking.
was my idea. You one up me. God liked yours. He didn't like mine. Now I'm mad. I mean, I feel that. I can feel that with Cain.
Okay, so you know I like the fact that you put yourself or you put us in the mindset of Cain.
Sure.
Because he absolutely could have thought that way. Like that would make sense. That's a good perspective there.
We just don't have much information here.
We
still
don't.
don't know why God
don't.
chose. You're even making a guess. Well, Abel brought the first fruits. You know, he brought the possibly the more valuable.
Right.
Maybe.
Well, I think that later on we know that will be more important. But right now we don't. There's nothing that indicates that idea was put in place.
Sure.
So it may be that Abel just looked at what he had and decided, because God is good, maybe I just want to give him a little bit more, my best.
Yeah.
And for Cain, it could have been, look, I believe that he is owed something. And I'm giving it to him because this is my offering. But think about something though. This is gonna sound really bad. Because we often would tell people things like, "Oh, the Lord just
You're already there. You
just
gotta
wants
keep
you
going.
to come and just wants you to give whatever."
Give whatever. Get the offering plates ready.
I don't know. Maybe we should stop saying just bring whatever you want.
This is Old Testament, bro. We're under a new covenant. God's looking for joyful givers.
I did not come to destroy the law, but to fulfill. No, let me stop.
You're way off story at this point.
But it does. I think that a person who is reading this story, that would be a legitimate question to ask.
Yeah, it is a question.
And just regarding this idea of Abel's offering being specified the way that it is, and maybe the specification, because again we're hypothesizing, is just to make a distinction between the two offerings that were brought.
Yeah.
No different than somebody brought $100 and somebody brought $10. Mm-hmm. It doesn't necessarily measure the amount of it is not the big deal. It is more so the sacrifice in it per se is the
Maybe
more bigger
or
deal.
the heart in it.
Or
Maybe
the heart.
we don't see the heart.
Sure.
And the truth is, the reason we ask these questions is we don't know what we don't know.
Right.
It doesn't tell us. But we do know that somehow there was a delineation here that Abel's was favored and accepted by God and Cain's was not.
Yes.
But I love that the very next part of the story is that God steps in and speaks to Cain.
He does.
And the funny thing about it is, when God asks a question, like, does he not know the answer? You know what I mean? Like, it's like, he says, why is your face downcast, Cain? I mean,
yeah. Well, you
know why his face is downcast.
Well, and that's interesting because when you look at it, it says that when their offerings were or were not accepted, it's as if they were or were not accepted.
Right.
So so part of the downcast face is
I've been rejected by God.
Right. Yeah. My offering and me.
Maybe, but if you were rejected by God, or at least the way maybe we perceive it, would we expect God then to come after us in a good way? Because he does.
He does.
And he appeals to Cain. He's like, whoa.
He does.
What's going on here?
Yeah.
And it's almost like, again, we don't know why his initial offering was not favored by God, but God's saying, you can make this right.
Yes.
I love that about the heart of God, to come after us, to speak with us, to deal with our hearts, whereas he doesn't have to do that, except it's who he is. You know what I mean?
You just brought up another good point too, and maybe we don't always want to say it this way, this bluntly, but something is wrong about Cain's offering. something is not right.
Because he said,
And
if
God
you
clearly,
do right,
if you do right. So God is
you
clearly
can make this right.
right. And so whether whether they had some type of ritual that they had been told by God at some point right after they got kicked out of the garden, or maybe their dad has given them some offerings. That's the part we don't know. But it would appear as if either Cain knows what he should have done, or the feelings in which have been felt due to God's rejection communicates you didn't do something that you were supposed to do.
Right.
And again, the implication is that Cain knows what the right is. If you do right,
you will be accepted if you do right.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
You know what's crazy though also is that Cain's internal anger just affects his whole external mood and body language.
Yeah.
He's angry, and so his countenance has fallen.
Sure.
And the Lord was like, why are you angry? Why is your countenance falling? So not only does a narrator address both, but God addresses both.
Well, going back to what we were saying, too, that God seems to be offering here another opportunity.
Yeah.
And Cain is viewing it as, I have failed, game over. And God's like, you can make this right.
You can make this right.
You can deal with this. You don't have to be downcast in a sense. Like, even if it was in good faith, he offered his offering, but it wasn't what was right.
Yes.
Then it's not like God's done with you. God wasn't done with Cain. He's like, no, let's make it right, buddy. Come on back. But yeah, Cain, it seems, had considered it game over. But I love that, but then the warning of the Lord too, right?
Yeah.
Like, you can make this right, but if you don't, you're embracing sin, and it will take you down.
Yes.
I mean, that's timeless.
Yes. Yes.
That's a message.
That's a huge one. And even when the Lord is like, listen, if you do not do well. So part of what I guess promotes even more the sin is continuing to stay with the wrong behavior.
Yeah.
Like not course correcting. And so God is like, hey, yeah, we can you can fix this. Game is not over. You can make this right, but you have to make this right. Otherwise, sin is crouching at the door, and sin even desires to master you or to control you, basically. He said, but you must master it. And so, I think that, man, there's a lot to be just learned here in some sense, just personally.
Yeah.
Because there are times where I think we are feeling bad or we're angry, and we're angry because we didn't do what we should have done.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the opportunity even to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like you take a test and you get a bad grade, and the teacher says, well, you can come in, maybe tomorrow, go home tonight, study, come in tomorrow, and take a retake. And, you can change your grade. And then you're mad.
You're like, no.
Yeah, no, I don't want to do that. The test shouldn't have, I should have got a better grade the first time around. It's like...
Or it's a give up. No, actually what I think of is again, reading between the lines, is what happened here that Cain's shame took him down. Right? I didn't do it right. And then we changed the narrative. I am bad.
Yeah.
Therefore, there's no hope for me. What am I going to do about it? And instead of accepting what seems to be the Lord's invitation and challenge here to make it right between him and God,
yes,
he takes his eyes off God and turns his anger, his shame towards his brother.
Yeah. Or almost like he holds on to his anger and his shame, and now instead of trying to correct with God, he's going to put all that energy on the individual who has done it right, as if that's the problem.
Right. If I can bring him down, then we're on the same level. Ooh, we never do that, though, do we?
Oh, never. Never. And that's where that kind of jealousy and envy can really be bad, when it's not even so Cain could get actually what Abel is experiencing.
Yes.
If he just simply course corrects, like
Yes.
God says.
Yes.
And it has nothing to do with Abel. If anything, Abel is just an example of what the offering should look like, and then God's response to an offering when it is what it's supposed to be. So he's just an example. But instead of course correcting, it's like, if I just get rid of Abel.
Look at the energy expenditure, though, right?
Ooh.
Like the
Ooh,
energy he has here in feeling rejected by God and shamed at himself, he turns at his brother. Whereas God gave him, this is the most hopeful piece of this story to me, is that God says, look, sin is trying to come after you and it desires to master you, but you must master it.
Yes.
It's the most hopeful because God's saying you can.
Yes.
You have an opportunity to be victorious over the sin that you've participated in and the shame you're currently under. Like, because when God says it, it's now a possibility.
Yeah.
I heard it said that way one time, like anytime God speaks something, at the same time he releases the grace to us to be whatever he's just said. Even if it sounds impossible, right? Because his word is that power. So if God says you can master the sin crouching at your door, it's because he's giving you the power to master it. And instead of accepting that hopeful invitation, Cain's like, nah, I'm taking all this energy to bring my brother down. Like, now we're painting him as the bad guy, but look,
He is. I mean,
we do this all the time.
Yeah, we do.
Let's be honest.
Yes, we do. We do. And you know, the other thing about it, and we've probably kind of alluded to this already, but man, you're making some excellent points. Just again, talking through the text, but part of controlling the sin, I think, is just doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Like,
Just do the right thing.
just do the right thing, Dr. Laura. Just do the right thing.
Wait, I don't know the Dr. Laura reference, but
That's
okay.
what she said. She's not go do the right thing. She ends her show that way.
Oh, I don't even know.
Oh, you've never heard of Doctor? Okay, well,
This is not her show.
it's not. So we're gonna move on. But definitely, I think again, part of mastering it in this case, part of the answer to that would just to just do the right thing, bring the acceptable offering, because then you will do the right thing, you will feel better, consciousness will arise, and you'll no longer be wrestling with the sin that seems to be being brooded in his anger and his shame and his decision not to do the right thing.
So why would he not take the opportunity to take a second chance? Do we do that?
Yeah, why do we not take
That's
the
what I
opportunity
mean.
to take the second chance?
Or do we not? I think if I have an opportunity to second chance, I'm gonna want to take it.
I think I would too. I'm usually a type of personality that if it
You don't wanna
wasn't
give
done
up.
well, then you give me a second chance, I want to try it again. But that's probably not as common as we think.
Maybe. Or is it, this is so early in the human story, at least from what we know, but is it that we already have operating here in the first family an honor shame culture? Meaning that once you've been shamed, maybe you feel like you can never truly erase it.
That's a good point.
Like if you use the test example, your wrong answers have all been X'd out in red.
Right.
Even if you write the right answer, you still got red all over your paper.
That's right.
Is it that? I don't know.
Or is it going back to maybe their history together? Maybe Abel has always been the good son.
This is like the straw that
yeah.
kinda...
I mean, he is the one with the flocks and the herds, and so he's
I'm just out here with
in
the
Cain out there in the field, hunting, and Cain's probably more the man's man, and Abel might be more the mama's boy.
I don't know.
So is it something that has happened in the past that maybe for Cain at this point, this is just another instance where my brother is being accepted or more acceptable than me?
Which could be true.
Yeah.
Well, in this particular instance, it was.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and we see that God says you can make this right. So there was something wrong with what he did. But
Yep.
even if there wasn't, let's ask a practical question. How do we respond, or what is the righteous way to respond when someone seems to be being favored by God or people, but in this sense by God, and I don't feel like I am? What do I do,
Ooh.
Pastor Coy?
Well, I mean, we know the biblical answer. I mean, you're supposed to walk in humility and recognizing that God is sovereign and he has decided to show favor here in a way that he's not showing it over there. I mean, God is very clear. I will bless who I want to bless, or favor who I want to favor. And it doesn't mean that the other person doesn't get some favor. There just seems to be an extra measure over here. Because the Bible is good. The rain comes down on the righteous and the just alike. Mm-hmm. So then that's the righteous and the unjust, or the righteous and the wicked. We see biblical stories where it's not like the individuals, there's only one righteous individual, there may be several. But how God is favoring one or the other can sometimes be different. And the appropriate response is just to let God be God, to thank him for the blessings that are in your life, but still acknowledge the significant amount of favor in the life of somebody else.
One gets 5 talents.
One gets 2.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not the number of talents you're given, but how you steward them.
That's right.
How do you steward the favor you do have?
Yeah.
How do you steward the opportunities you do have?
And how do you look at someone who gets to more favor than it appears that they get more favor?
Right.
Because even in that talent story, the master gives each servant what they can handle. So the master's aware of what each can handle. And so 1, 2, this one 2, this one 5. And we see 5 and 2 doubling.
Yeah.
So obviously he knew who could handle what. And in some sense, God knows what we can handle.
Sure.
And he may give you 5 spiritual gifts and me 2 spiritual gifts to utilize. Will I be as faithful over the 2 as you are over the 5? Or the individual who gets 1? But yeah, we still have to be faithful to steward whatever he gives. Be thankful for it.
Yes.
He could have given you nothing.
Yeah.
And he gave you something.
Right. Well, if we're using that parable as a link, although it's not exact.
Sure.
At the end of the day, we're not judged on the amount.
Right.
We're not compared to our brothers.
Right.
We're judged on our faithfulness.
Yeah.
And I think the maybe the Achilles heel sin in it all is comparison. Because even God, when he comes to Cain, isn't talking about Abel.
That's good.
He's talking about Cain.
Cain. Yeah.
Like let's talk. That's God's like, hey Cain, we need to talk.
That he never mentions Abel.
But Cain is being driven by the comparison factor. He made his offering, he was accepted. I made mine, it wasn't accepted. There's something wrong with me, and I'm mad about it.
And I'm going to do something. But it's not the right thing.
No.
I'm going to do something, but it's not the right thing.
Right. It's so funny, like, there are catchphrases now, right? Like, comparison is a killer.
Oh, yeah.
Well, apparently in Genesis 4 it was. Or comparison is the thief of joy.
Sure.
For sure. That's a little more, pop culture-y, but.
Although that would be accurate here, too. Because he
was downcast.
He stays angry. He cannot, and to God's credit, or to his point, in order to get out of this mode of anger and downcast spirit or body, you have to do the right thing. I think that is another one of those kind of like significant like aha moments. Like, you can come out of the funk that you're in. And so, I mean, think about it with your wife. You do something, and you ever had that conversation or that argument, and you're going back and forth, and you're trying to convince her that she's wrong or that your way is more right?
Good luck.
And then you ever had that moment when you actually, like, she just gives up, says, oh, okay, I guess you're right. She walks
Ooh.
away. And you're just left there like,
Ooh.
I just fought to prove that I was right. And now that she said that I meant, it was almost as if all the energy I put into trying to prove myself right now wasn't worth it.
Right? What did you want? I mean, what did you want?
I wanted to be told I was right, but now you got it. Well, I don't
She's
want
like,
that
whatever.
anymore.
Fine. These are code words. It's not whatever and it's not fine. Okay, just take that, married couples. So when we see favor, privilege, blessing on another person, more often than not, we turn our attention toward them or against them instead of being thankful, being faithful with what we do have, and we get jealous. We try to take those people down, one way or another. That's sin crouching at our door.
Yes, that's good. And unfortunately, we, like you said earlier, we start to compare as opposed to celebrate what God may be doing in the life or ministry of someone else. You know how often, we as pastors, sometimes we get together and we talk, and whether we are listening or talking to the person ourselves about how well their ministry is going or how large it's gotten, or
Right?
there are times where that we get a little envious, a little jealous, even whether we say it or not. But
Right.
internally, we're starting to
Yeah.
wrestle. And man, I gotta tell you, I am so tired of people getting on YouTube and trying to talk about everybody's sermon. And this is just so
Like trying to take them down,
take
you
them
mean?
down. Yeah, like,
Ooh.
it's just so bad. And then they try to tell you that the church is only large because this is all they preach. I'm like, oh my
The
goodness.
judgment is real.
Oh my God. Are you really? Why not acknowledge the fact that God could be using that man or that individual, because it could be a woman too at times, in such a way that people's lives are being transformed because
Sure.
the name of Jesus is going forward?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
no. We got to talk about every aspect of their theology. I want to break apart their sermon. And when they say one thing that's a little off, or even several things that is like, oh, that's what I want to harp on.
Yeah, right. If they're big and successful, they
Yes.
must be compromised.
Yeah.
They
yeah.
must be doing
They
something
must be doing
wrong.
prosperity gospel.
They
Like,
must
that's
be.
the only reason why. They're not teaching the whole Bible. They're only seeker friendly. Like,
I think it goes both ways, though, right? Like maybe people get an attitude or jealous about someone who's seemingly successful, and so we judge them in our own eyes. There must be something wrong.
Yeah.
This is worldly success. They're attracting the world. They're in sin, they're taking money, whatever. But at the end of the day, we're trying to decide whose offering is better. What if,
Wow.
you can flip the story both ways. Maybe that minister, that pastor that seems to be like blowing up in all the like worldly successful ways is Abel's offering and is pleasing to the Lord. On the other hand, they could be Cain.
that's
And
true.
we don't know.
And we don't know.
We're not the judge.
Right.
Or the jury.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean? We think we are.
Right.
But like that thing that looks so big and beautiful and successful in the world's eyes could be an offering that God is not pleased with.
That's right.
I hate to think of that. I'm not trying to say that's the truth, but I think it could be either way. We don't have those eyes to see. Now we're supposed to discern fruit.
Sure.
Right? If somebody's lying,
Yes.
stealing,
Someone's distorting the gospel.
abusing people,
Yes.
preaching another gospel.
Yes.
Okay, bad fruit.
Right.
Yep. We're supposed to know them by their fruit. But
Yes.
if they're preaching the gospel in the Bible, they
Yeah.
seem to have integrity.
Yes.
They're kind to people. It's good fruit.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
hey,
saying?
I'm with you. And I try not to get caught up too much in, again, all the different nuances of maybe someone's doctrinal stance or even at times denominational stance. Because sometimes denominational stances are not really as essential or critical to the faith. It's just unique to this group
Your expression. Yeah.
and my expression of my
Yeah, yeah.
faith. And that expression may be different than my own expression. So I do find that comparison thing is often something that is taking place. Now, again, this is you and I, as you said earlier, taking out the concept that Cain did do something wrong.
Right.
This is just when we're comparing ourselves to
We're
our
comparing.
brother or sister, and it's like
That
why?
really is the problem.
That is the problem.
Because Cain could have made it right.
Yeah,
There was
absolutely.
nothing stopping him. God's inviting him. God's encouraging him. God's like, sin is going to take you down, but I don't want that for you, Cain.
Man.
You can master this thing. Talk to me. Look at me. Let's
Oh,
get
that's
this
good.
right.
That's good.
And Cain's like, I'm not looking at you. I'm not listening to you. I see my brother Abel over there with your favor, and I'm mad. And I don't want to be unmad.
Ooh,
you know, I want
Wow. That's crazy. I want to stay mad and then go get him. Man, but that image that you said, God, stay looking at me.
Yeah.
Just look at me. He's like, I don't want to look at you. Man. Now, that's an image. That's a word picture right there.
It's, yeah. I mean, it really is perspective and the comparison thing. Like, what are we looking at? Where's our standard? Is it comparing myself to my brother? No.
Which, by the way, is a foolish standard because even at times, at some point, comparing your standard to your brother's standard, it's not going to be a high enough standard.
Right.
Like, God is the standard.
Right.
And his will and what he says. And so while your brother may be good in this one, he's not going to be good in every last one. So that whole, look at me thing, which you're right. In some sense, God appears to be trying to get Cain to look at him, to remember what is right, so that way he can execute or do what is right and change the whole dynamic of how this story ultimately ends.
Instead of taking up God on his invitation,
Yeah.
let's go on, right? Cain says, hey, let's go out in the field. He had a whole premeditated plan here.
Right. So this ain't just murder. This is premeditated. murder.
I mean,
That'll get you
if
more
you're
time
in a
in
court
prison.
of law, and he just attacked his brother and killed him.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That's what sin does, though, when we don't master it.
Ooh, talk about that.
When we allow sin to crouch. And when you think about the idea of crouching, you think about like lions in the wild. And that innocent animal that's coming by doesn't know it's about to be lunch. And that lion blends in, or lioness, with the tall grass
Right.
and pounces. And in some sense, I get the same idea of sin. It's just crouching there. And because we don't do the right thing, or we allow our emotions to continue to get the better of us, in that moment, those emotions just overtake us. And then the result is sin.
Yeah.
Sin.
Well, and I'm thinking of this too, like, if we don't jump on the opportunity to master sin, then it will master us.
Absolutely.
Right, and that's what happened.
Yep.
Right, like God offers him, encourages him, exhorts him, you can master this. This doesn't have to master you. But because he didn't, is when it overtook him.
Yeah.
And that really is the story, isn't it? Like at every turn, we're tempted. Sin would love to have us, whether it's, murder seems far-fetched, but we can talk about that in a second. But whether it's lust or greed or whatever, they're crouching. And if you don't take the opportunity, I would say immediately to master it, to overcome it, to confront it, then it will overtake you. That's what happened here.
That's good. So it's almost like God tries to confront the problem, so that way Cain can control it. Because I think part of the mastery is, it'll control you, or either you will control it or it will control you.
Yes.
And that's a good thought there. You got to confront the sin. You got to confront the action that is not right.
Even when it's just in your mind.
Right?
Because it was probably in his mind.
That's true. Even though it showed up physically, you're right.
It wasn't physically there yet.
Yes.
But God saw
Yes.
what was in Cain's mind. God saw what was in Cain's heart. And before it was able to come to fruition, God says, hey, I see what's going on here. Let's not do this. And so, when we have a realization that sin is trying to come at us, then we have to take decisive action
Yeah.
before we've actually sinned.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's almost like God was trying to get his attention
Yeah.
on his way to what would be sin.
Yeah.
And so how many times have you been
Ooh.
about to do something and then something
Roadblock.
clicks in your head like, oh, maybe you shouldn't. Or you get stopped at a stoplight.
Right.
And it's like it's causing you to pause and think.
That's
And
God's mercy, bro.
That's God saying, hey, I'm trying. Hey, I'm talking.
Right?
Focus on me. Focus
Right.
on
Look
me.
at me. Don't do this. Ooh. There's a lot there.
Yeah, it is. But that's not what Cain does, and obviously we do know it. It's not what Cain does. He takes Abel onto the field, and then he rises up against him, and he does kill his brother. I do want to talk about the punishment a little bit, though.
Hold on.
Okay, all right. Before we get there,
Let's bring this down to real life for a moment.
Okay, all right.
All right.
Okay,
So
all right.
what could this look like, right? So you're upset with somebody, and you're about to send that salty text or post a comment on their thing.
Yeah.
And obviously this has never happened to me, but it doesn't go through the first time.
Ooh.
That's the Lord.
That means stop.
That's the Lord. Or you're about to buy that thing you can't really afford.
Yeah.
And your credit card number doesn't go in right at the first time. That's God. He's saying sin is crouching at your door.
He's trying to confront you.
But you can master it. I mean, for real, this is real life. Tell me this isn't real life.
Oh, that would be real.
I want to
life.
get more personal.
No, that's good. That is good. And unfortunately, again, Cain doesn't.
He didn't.
So Cain makes two major choices in this story. His offering is a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And then his decision to not accept what God has confronted him with. And as a result, his brother is not only dead, but murdered by him. And
Which is a huge loss to his life.
Yeah,
he just lost his brother.
Lost his brother, right. And I'm not sure I don't know that his intent was to murder him. I don't know. Maybe he just wanted to beat him up really badly. But whatever that ultimate intent was, it resulted in murder.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, in that moment of rage and anger, as you're taking it all out on this person who you have pretty much sabotaged, which is what we do. We try to sabotage somebody else.
Right.
But now his brother is gone.
Mm-hmm.
And then what?
You can't undo that.
You can't.
And it's not just a loss to you. It's a loss to your parents.
Yeah.
The economy around you.
Yeah.
Right?
All the sheep,
right?
The flock that he was.
Somebody's got to take his place. That's wild. You know what other thought I had that struck me when you were talking? If we roll it back to the offering, what about, folks who will say, well, I tried to live for God. I tried that Christian thing. It didn't work out for me.
Yeah.
Right? Like, because Cain brought his offering.
Yeah.
He worshiped the Lord. And it wasn't accepted, so he could be that guy, right? Like, it didn't work out. It didn't work out for me.
And you know what's crazy? People are saying that. And that led me
they're saying it for real.
That led me to a thought that I had right before you said that, but only kind of confirms or like adds to it. And that is, so Cain will kill Abel. And in all that he has done, guess what he still has not done?
Made it right.
The right thing, right? And so the person who was
Two wrongs.
they don't make it right.
They didn't make it right.
So even the person who's like, hey, I tried God. So now your excuse for not doing the right thing now.
Because you tried it once.
I tried, it didn't work out. And so I'm just going to stay in the wrongness, which means you're still not right. Like you're still not getting it right with God.
And you are now being mastered by sin.
Absolutely. Yes.
Whether you can admit that or believe that or not, that's the truth.
That is the truth.
So I don't know if we're ready to start closing it out, but I cannot, because, we're talking about murder.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not probably going to think about murdering anyone.
Me neither. Me neither. Never
So
crossed my mind.
how can we make this real in real time for us? Because,
Okay.
our listeners are like, yeah, it's great Old Testament story. I don't even know if it's real. Because a lot of people, anyways, that's another podcast.
I think part of how we make it real is helping our listeners understand that there are times where your actions towards a brother or sister were malicious.
Sure.
So it may not lead to murder.
Sure.
They were just malicious because you experienced, you saw, you felt God's favor on their life. And in this case specifically, you really weren't doing what you were supposed to be doing, which is why you're not experiencing God's favor. We'll talk about some stories where, it just seems like God is making a choice and, this doesn't seem fair. But in this case, God is truly accepting one offering over the other because one is acceptable and the other is not to God.
Yeah.
But I think that there are many people out there, many of us at times, who are just very malicious. We're meticulous sometimes in our manipulative manner.
Meticulous.
But yeah. Because notice he invites him out into the field. He
knew what he was up to.
Yeah, he knew something was going. He knew he was going to jump on his brother. Like this was not.
Yes.
It wasn't no accident.
Yes.
Because the Lord has already said, if you don't control it, sin is crouching at the door
Right.
and it's seeking to master you, control you. So I think that is one of the practical applications for us to take away from a story like this.
Here's the biggest truth bomb, I think, one of the biggest in my mind that Jesus ever dropped. All right? Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5:21. You've heard it said that to the people long ago, you shall not murder, and that anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. Right? Got it.
Yeah.
Murder's bad. But I tell you
Uh-oh.
that anyone who's angry with a brother or sister will be subject to a judgment. Again, anyone who says to a brother or sister, Raka, is answerable to the court. And anyone who says, you fool, will be in danger of the fire of hell.
Yeah.
Jesus goes from murder to angry to calling your brother a fool
Yeah, he does.
and says it's all the same thing. And the idea there, right, that term Raka was an Aramaic term that was basically like you're empty-headed,
Yeah. Yes.
you're of no
You
value.
know of no use, yes.
And so whenever we view a brother or sister as foolish or valuable, or, man, I'd be fine if they weren't here, or I'd rather they not be here, is really the spirit of murder.
Wow.
That's the spirit of murder, sin crouching at your door.
The door. Jesus talked about that spirit of the law.
Yeah, that is the spirit of the law, not the letter of the law.
Yeah.
Because the letter of the law was like, don't murder. You'll be subject to judgment. He says, don't look at another human being, especially your brother or sister, and think that they have no value. Think that the world would be better here without them.
Which is part of what would be, the sin crush. That would lead you to be, if you are that upset, well, since you don't have much value, we're better off without you.
Right.
Much easier to now manifest or execute that.
Well, the full expression of that would be murder, right?
Murder,
I'm
yes.
literally going to remove you
That's
from
right.
the planet.
Yeah.
Now, we're too sophisticated most of the time to do that. But,
I like that most of the time.
But I'm going to block, delete, cancel you from my life, and tell all my friends not to talk to you.
Wow. Man, that is interesting. I had a situation recently where a good friend of mine, we've been friends for a long time, and a decision was made by him that I didn't particularly agree with. And over time, we realized we were on different odds or different sides of the coin on this particular issue. And it created a huge rift. And so at one point in time when we were talking, he shared with me that he just didn't feel as safe sharing things with me. And I said, okay, no problem. I'll give you some space.
Right.
Right. And so as time went on, we realized that there was even more and more space, and we were talking less and less, and I mean a lot less. And from my end, I'm giving you the space you need. You don't feel safe, and you shared that, so all I can do is just sit back and wait. So at one point in time, we were texting, and in one of the texts, the concept, the idea of, you know, when that decision was made, I lost my best friend, right? And so when that was written to me in a text, now I lost my best friend when I made this decision. I replied with a text, let's be clear, you didn't lose your best friend. I'm just on the shelf.
Put me on the shelf.
You put me on the shelf. And I said, just like, you know, in Toy Story where Woody always reminds the toys, we belong to Andy. And we're here for him whenever he needs us or wants us. So if he puts you on the shelf, you just stay on the shelf. I said, so whenever you want to put me back off the shelf, I'm going to be there, no matter what. Because in my mind,
you got a present. Okay, go ahead. What's your story?
Our brotherhood and our friendship, it didn't end.
Right.
It's just in a season where it looks a little bit different.
Sure.
Due to something that took place, that legitimately took place, where it was more challenging for us to kind of, you know, be like we once were. And I said, I look forward to the day when, you know, we're on the other side of this. But until that time, you didn't lose me. You didn't lose me. I just got to be on the shelf. And I'm okay being on the shelf because I'm your friend.
Right.
And you know, it can be hard to be in that place or to accept that place.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, he is valuable.
Yeah.
We are both God's children, both God's servants. And the Lord knows why this is happening. He has commanded us to preserve unity.
Yeah.
To walk in peace. And sometimes walking in peace means, okay, we can't take this same path together at this time, but that doesn't mean that, you know, when I see you, I'm not going to be happy to see you. I'm not going to jump up and down when I get a phone call. Like, hey, man, what's going on? You know? Because I don't think we're supposed to hold grudges like that. We're not supposed to compare, and we definitely shouldn't let our minds ever get to the place where our brother or sister is valueless.
Yeah. And that's a challenge, right? Like, if we're honest, like, there are people, we have thoughts like, man, life might be a little easier if they weren't here. Now, we're not really wishing them gone.
Right.
But, like, we're just admitting, like, man, they
create some tension in my life.
Yeah, they do. And we can admit that, you know, without the challenge then is to be able to admit, like, they challenge me.
Yeah.
But they have value.
Absolutely.
I may not see or experience the value, let's be honest, but they do. Yeah. And I have to hold that value.
Oh, that's good.
You know what I mean? According to the words of Jesus, I have to hold that reality in my heart, as hard as it may be. I mean, God never called us to easy, right?
Right.
Like, Jesus' words almost never are easy, and maybe on purpose, right? When we look at that, then we have to say, I can't do that on my own.
That's good.
But again, bring it back to the story here. Like, God was right there with Cain. Yeah. Let's walk this out better together, Cain. Let's do something different. He was there to help.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, that's face-to-face with God, but we got the indwelling Holy Spirit now. Surely we can be empowered to do what seems hard in our flesh. I am going to choose to see the value in this brother or this sister.
Wow.
I have to do it all the time with you, Coy, but no, I had to. That came out so easy.
Did it come out
so easy? Forgive me.
Then it
forgive
wasn't
me.
Jesus then, because it was too easy. All right, we just said.
If you invite me out to a field, I'm not coming.
Forget the field. You be the parking lot. It's over with.
Oh, because we in the city now. I get.
You know, it's one of the things I want us to just kind of highlight before we wrap this up, and that is Cain's response to God's consequences. Like, so, you know, Cain, you know, kills Abel, and then God comes down and it's like, hey, why is your brother's blood calling for me from the ground? And so God will basically curse Cain. You know, in verse 10 it says, God says, what have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground. Now you're accursed from the ground, which has opened his mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you cultivate the ground, it will no longer yield its strength to you. You will be a vagrant and wanderer on the earth. And this is interesting because God actually attacks, Cain's major profession, his way of living. So now when you work, and it won't produce like it as easy as it once did. But Cain says to the Lord, verse 13, my punishment is too great to bear. I often experience individuals who think we can handle the consequences when God tries to confront our wrongdoing. We feel like I can handle the consequences.
Oh, that's scary.
And so we go on forward with our choice and our sin. And then the consequences hit.
And you're like, oh, no.
This is unfair. Like, this is not right. And it's like, what are you talking about?
You brought this on
yourself? You brought this on yourself.
Ooh.
Yeah. I saw a TikTok recently where a young man had committed some crime. And so he's standing before the judge getting sentenced. He almost passes out.
He didn't believe?
Yeah, he didn't believe it was really going to happen. Right now it's happening. And, man, how many times are we making decisions in the moment because of our emotions, our anger? And you have not considered the consequences.
Yeah.
And, when you start blocking and trying to cancel people and when you're overly critical or you're trying to publicly humiliate somebody because I don't agree with you, I think you're wrong, I'm going to tell the whole world. So once you achieve that, the consequences that you now have to deal with, you really can't bear them.
It's true.
So I've just always thought it was interesting that is Cain's cry after God literally tries to stop him from going in this direction.
So what's the moral of the story then, right? Like, there will be contention among brothers. Yeah. We will be tempted to compare.
Yeah.
And God would say, look at me.
Oh, that's good.
I'm not judging you based on your brother. I'm not judging your brother based on you.
I'm judging you based on
we got the
you.
wrong value system.
Right.
Let's have the right value system. Because, contention will come.
Yeah.
Favor will come and go.
Yes.
Favor ain't fair, as they say.
That's what they say. You said favor will come and go, and that's a good point.
It will.
Because God's favor may rest on this person today in an illuminated, more of an expressive way, but his favor may be resting on you tomorrow. And so all the more reason to celebrate who is on today, because it might be you tomorrow.
Right.
And you don't want people, hating and trying to tear you down.
So what you want to reap.
Exactly. Yeah. Your turn is coming. With all four of our kids, there are times where, Christmas, everybody gets gifts. There are times where you go to the store and, everybody gets a piece of candy. But then there are times where only one child was with me.
Right.
And I bought them something.
Yeah.
And they come home and they're all excited. And
you
it's
didn't
like,
get it for everybody.
Yeah, and it's like, the other kid's like, did you give? No, I didn't get you. You weren't there. It's like, Dad, that's not fair. And you need to go celebrate with your sibling. Maybe next time you'll go.
Yeah.
There's something significant about just time with Dad.
Yeah.
And we taught our kids early, especially like around their birthdays, because birthdays are individual.
Yeah.
But when one child gets an award or one child gets a gift from somebody else and everybody else, and it had nothing to do with birthday. It was just, hey, somebody, you need to rejoice and celebrate that.
That's good.
Because when your day comes, you're going to want the same thing.
Yeah, you want them to celebrate with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, to watch my kids celebrate with one another.
That's awesome.
When they are individually being recognized or receiving gifts, very little jealousy between the four of them when one of them is being lifted up.
That's awesome.
I bought my oldest son an Apple Watch recently because he's training, and he was talking about, it's hard for me to record my times because I can't carry my phone when I'm running, and sometimes I'm training by myself. Well, I use an Apple Watch, and I thought, you know what? So
Get him one too.
I sent him. I bought one and had it sent to his address in college. So the other night we were all talking on ourselves. Like we FaceTime my daughter who's in college, my son who's in college. The mother, 2 kids are there at the kitchen table, and my oldest son is keeps showing the image of his watch, right? So finally, my wife says, "Seth, when did you get an Apple Watch?" He was
She didn't know
because she didn't even know, right? She was like, he's like, "Ask Dad."
Yeah, right. That's what I would have said. It was him. He knew.
But none of the kids were like, "Well, where's mine? I didn't get one."
Oh,
It was just like,
good.
"Oh, okay, all right."
Oh, we
There
got
you
an
go,
Apple
Seth.
Watch.
Look at that, got an Apple Watch, But teaching our children and ourselves to celebrate with others when God is showing favor on them.
I think that's good. I think it's a good place to land. 'Cause someone will always be being celebrated, and it won't always be you. Let's just like be practical, right? You're gonna be a happier person if you learn to celebrate,
That's true.
right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing as being thankful. You will be a happier person if you're thankful, even if all you have to be thankful for is the clothes on your back. You'll be happier. It'll be a happier life for you. You know what I mean? Rather than thinking of all the things you don't have. Because there will always be things you don't have that you should get. I don't have an Apple Watch. I celebrate Seth, though. He got his Apple Watch. But for real. All right, I'm done.
You done? Well,
Are you?
This was a good time, man.
It was.
It was a good time. I'm looking forward to the next time
Oh,
we
yeah.
do this. This is definitely going to be an interesting season. So
Look out, everyone. We're unpacking the word on Pulpit Aside.
That's right. We're not preaching.
No.
We're just giving practical applications from characters and stories in the Bible as 2 pastors have conversations.
Yeah, I hope you feel like you're in on the conversation too. Maybe you had some thoughts while you're listening to us banter through this account. Feel free to send them to us. You can find us on our social media accounts, Facebook, Instagram. Comment on the YouTube video if you want. Of course, like, subscribe, share, all the things. And if you're old school, you can email us at pulpitaside@gmail.com.
Listen, we want to thank you all for joining us for another podcast session of Pulpit Aside. You guys take care. God bless.
See you soon.